Well, blessed to be with you, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Thank you all for joining us. Getting ready for Miller's Mission. Coming up the month of May, we will formulate and focus our plan to help our friends at the Boise Rescue Mission. We're looking for a lot of community partners. We'll tell you a little bit more about that as the day progresses. But a young man who joins us now from Washington, our great friend Phil Kerpen joining us. Phil, good to have you with us.
Hey, great to be with you, Kevin.
So, the big story here, high gas prices. This is right up your alley.
They're inching back up. It's true. I don't know what you're seeing by you. We're up over $3 here, so people are starting to get a little worried about that. What are you seeing out there?
Oh, well over $3. Our gasoline prices are usually the highest in the nation. They're the quickest to go up, and it takes forever to get us below the national average. In fact, last month, in a month, we went up 50 cents a gallon.
Wow, that's brutal. So you're way above. I think the national average now is about 260 or 265. I thought we were bad here. We're up over $3, but this is the time of year where we usually see that jump because the refiners have to switch to the summer blends, which are a little more expensive, and so there is a seasonal effect here that's part of it. But we are also looking at higher crude prices. Last week, I think they went above 65 for a little bit. They've come down a little bit in the last couple of days. I think they're around 62 or 63 now. I haven't looked this morning. To the extent that some of it is a run-up in crude, I think we're going to see an easing of that to a certain extent. We always see a little bit higher prices when we have this switch around the spring. But I would expect that we're probably at the peak right now. I don't think it's going to go much higher than this in the summer. I think it'll probably ease off a little bit.
Phil Kerpen joining us from American Commitment. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. It just seems frustrating since aren't we the world's largest energy producer now?
We are number one in oil and gas. We're also, we have been, in a couple of these weeks, the number one exporter as well, which is pretty incredible considering where we were just a few years ago. That doesn't mean that we're not susceptible to price movements, though. First of all, the crude market is still a global market, and so we are still susceptible to supply disruptions and other factors abroad. And probably the most significant global factor on why we've seen a little bit higher price in the last few weeks is actually a policy decision I agree with from the administration, even though it's one that pinches us a little bit. In terms of the price of oil, and that is that we've closed the loopholes that were allowing Iran to sell oil outside of the sanctions regime. The administration cracked down on that, so that took some Iranian oil effectively off the world market. And so there are a lot of factors that go into this. Some of them are political, some of them are just economic demand from abroad and other factors. But the fact that we're a much larger producer than we have been in recent years doesn't mean that we're not vulnerable to movements in price, but it does mean, and I think this is a crucial thing for people to understand, it does mean that we're far less susceptible to supply disruptions. We're not in a situation like we were in the 70s where if OPEC really squeezed off the supply, they could basically shut down our economy. And in that kind of an emergency situation, we would have adequate supplies because of how high U.S. production is. But you still have a lot of interdependencies. You still have a world price that can be vulnerable to things that happen in other places. And so it's not like we're not economically insulated from the rest of the world, even though production is much higher than it has been. But we are in a much stronger position. And by the way, Kevin, one of the reasons that prices haven't gone up a lot more than they otherwise would have, given that OPEC and Russia's strategy has been to drive prices higher by pulling production off. One of the reasons that they haven't been nearly as successful as they want to be, and they want a barrel price in the 80s, not in the 60s where we are now, is that North American production has increased every time OPEC and Russia has cut their production. And so U.S. market share has increased significantly, and price movements have been a lot less than they otherwise would have been given what we're seeing in terms of the price strategy from other producers.
Phil Kerpen joining us, talking energy. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. He's from American Commitment. Phil, let's take a look at just the renaissance of American energy production. It used to be, in the Dakotas. Now we're talking about West Texas. I think it was, I can't remember one of the shows, maybe it was 60 Minutes, where we're talking about that one day you could have as much oil being produced out of the West Texas area as the country of Iraq?
Yeah, the Permian Basin is now the largest oil field in the world, which is pretty incredible in terms of daily average production. It's surpassed, so the richest fields in the Middle East and elsewhere, and we've done that in the U.S. Through technology. It's been pretty incredible, and we've got this massive boom in Texas. We have this boom in North Dakota. We've got. It really is a remarkable story. I mean, I don't know if you've seen this chart. People have been sharing this chart of a historical U.S. production, and there was this big peak in the 70s, and a lot of people said that was it. That was the peak of U.S. oil production. It was all going to be a decline from there. We're now above that peak, so we're at a record high in terms of U.S. Daily oil production, and we have sort of this big valley between the 70s and now where it looked like we were in decline, and that's now been completely reversed by technological developments, and a lot of oil that was thought to be unrecoverable, was thought to be impossible as a technical matter to recover, is now shifted over not just into theoretically recoverable, but into actual production. And so it is a remarkable story, and it was just a few years ago. I mean, it was not that long ago when President Obama was out there saying we could drill every inch of this country and we would never end our dependence on foreign oil and all this kind of stuff. And here we are now. We're the largest exporter in the world some weeks. Sometimes Saudis are still ahead of us. We're sort of neck and neck. But we've had some weeks as the number one exporter in the world, which is pretty unbelievable. If you would have said that a few years ago, people would have looked at you like you were completely insane, I think.
Phil, let's talk a little bit about the Saudis and the Middle East and our policy with them. There are a lot of reports going on about Saudi Arabia trying to come up with a post-oil kingdom. How is our relationship, and how does that relationship influence the cost of energy here in Idaho?
Well, first of all, there's nothing new. The Saudis have been talking about that for a number of years, although I have noticed that we've seen some more articles about that lately, so they're making a renewed push. I recall seeing a similar thing a few years ago. It's pretty tough. I think it's pretty tough to diversify away from oil when you've got an economy that is, they're a very wealthy country, and they only have one thing, but they have vast reserves. They probably have in the trillions of dollars of reserves of oil there, and that makes it pretty hard to switch into other things economically, because when you have when it's so easy to create such vast wealth from a single thing, it's hard to diversify into something else. Now that said, they do have a very large and very active sovereign wealth fund, basically a government-owned hedge fund that's been investing in all kinds of different things, and they're saying that they want to make Riyadh, their capital, more of a an entertainment and tourism capital, and they want to build it up like Vegas and that kind of thing. I think it's going to be pretty hard for them to do. I'm somewhat skeptical of that, although that is the United Arab Emirates, their neighbors, have done that to a certain extent in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, and they've diversified into sort of luxury real estate and travel and that kind of stuff. But look, the bottom line is these are going to remain oil states for a long time, in my judgment. But I do think that it says a lot about how they perceive sort of the change in the world order, that they do seem to be more concerned that they're not going to be price makers anymore, that the U.S. is going to be the largest producer, the largest swing producer, the largest exporter, and I think that changes the calculation a little bit to where they're much more nervous about how dependent they are on oil. Remember also, Kevin, they had a very bad experience when they had a low oil strategy several years ago. They had a strategy. They were going to drop the barrel price to $30, and they thought that would destroy all of their North American competitors, and then they could raise the price back up. And what happened instead was, it was painful for the U.S. oil industry, but they were able to weather the storm through increased efficiencies and taking some wells out of production. And it was much more painful for Saudi Arabia and especially for Venezuela, where they caused regime collapse. And the low price strategy totally failed, which is why they're now pursuing a high price strategy. And look, I think what it means for us in America is that we've got to stay on the course that we're on in terms of encouraging domestic production, technology development, being in a position where we're strong enough, and we have a strong enough industry that if they try to pursue a low-price strategy, we can survive that. And if they try to pursue a high-price strategy, we can use it as an opportunity to pick up market share and to prevent them from being able to raise prices too much and, hurting people at the pump in the U.S. And so the strength of the industry here, I think, really takes away the ability of Saudi Arabia and other oil-dependent countries to manipulate that market to their benefit. And I think they understand that increasingly, which is why they're making another run at this. We're going to diversify into something else story that, we've seen them announce before and not do a whole lot of, but maybe they're going to make a more concerted effort at it this time out of necessity.
And Phil, finally, you wrote an op-ed recently about payday loans, small money, big high interest. The government's rolling back the regulations on that. Is that the right thing to do?
I think so. I mean, these are extremely heavily regulated products already at the state and federal level, and the Obama regulations that they're revisiting would have put all these places out of business, essentially, by requiring an underwriting process more like applying for a mortgage, where you'd have to document all of your assets and income and all your other obligations and go to an underwriter, to borrow $100 for a week. And the business can't work with that. It's already, a lot of those companies have already gone out of business with the existing regulatory burdens. So the idea that could go in without basically destroying that industry, I think is very unlikely. And, as much as it might seem attractive to shut down that industry, the problem is that people turn to it typically when they're already in desperate situations. And if they don't have that to turn to as a last resort, they have only even worse options, writing a bad check or going to an illegal loan shark or letting crucial bills go unpaid. And so I think it's very important not to remove that $20 billion in sort of last resort consumer credit from the economy. And so I'm glad that the Trump CFPB is revisiting this. I'm sure it's going to be politically charged as they move forward on this, but I think they're doing the right thing.
Phil Kerpen, American Commitment. We appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
All right. Have a good one, Kevin.
Thank you. All right. Our great friend Phil Kerpen. Coming up next, we are going to continue our coverage on the high cost of gasoline. And at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, when people talk about America not being friendly to folks, when people talk about America being intolerant, well, coming up next, we'll disprove that great myth. Right before 6:30, you're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio.
I want to thank Rich Fitzgerald, the county executive, Allegheny County executive, for being here. And all my time in public life, since I've gotten involved, the country wasn't built by Wall Street bankers, CEOs, and hedge fund managers. If the enterprise hit hard times, everybody took a hit. Union workers, the UAW, took incredible cuts in their future and their pensions and the less to get GM working. They also got that last year and try to cut wages or freeze wages for their people. Right today, the same is happening in big hospital systems. I think we have to rethink how we define what constitutes a successful economy. Folks in America don't think their children are going to have the same standard of living they had. How can a person dignity be maintained? Why they do that? It means investing much more in medical research to conquer devastating diseases like cancer and addiction and Alzheimer's. So God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you.
And good morning, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Now, this happens to a lot of us. It's somewhat embarrassing. I have friends call me and say, Kevin, did you not get enough sleep last night? You're slurring your words, but your first big public event in Pennsylvania, east of the Great River for us, in Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, Joe Biden slurring his words. Joe Biden slurring his words, doing his own thing. That's not good for the 76-year-old. We'll get to that. Plus, gasoline prices going up. I want to get your thoughts on that at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Let's go to Max in Garden City with Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Max.
Good morning, Kevin. I was listening to Joe Biden just now, and I thought to myself, in imitation of Mr. Biden, how can a man who's lived in a bubble for generations tell us what's wrong and what's right with our country? He doesn't even go grocery shopping. He doesn't sit down at the table and ask himself why the electricity bill is so high this month. Come on. He is isolated like so many of the very wealthy. We don't need a man like him in public office. President Trump's best friends are blue-collar workers, cab drivers, iron workers. I'll bet you Joe Biden doesn't know anybody who works for a living. Just, a thought there. And I wanted to mention that I was talking with an acquaintance the other day. Let's just call him Mark. And I learned that not only Democrats can be intolerant snowflakes. This guy is a confirmed Republican, has his list of convictions that he will not discuss. If you even say the word propaganda, America launches propaganda, all countries do. He takes the worst meaning for propaganda and attacks me and says, "Are you a communist? Are you a spy?" And he's serious. Then he lectures me on the military. I did my 6 years in the Marine Corps. I did my job. And this whiny little rich boy, who rich kids don't enlist, that's a fact, is teaching me about the military because, after all, he watches YouTube. So people, you've got whiners on both sides, Democrats and Republicans. Tolerance. Be willing to discuss anything. Kevin, you do that on the show. You can get some total raging moron, and you'll discuss, you'll talk, you'll listen to both sides. Why can't we all be like Kevin? What say you?
I like that one. I'm going to use that on Mrs. Miller. Why can't we all be like Kevin?
Absolutely. We, well, not in all ways. I've dropped another 20 pounds. How are you doing?
Well, I probably gained another 20, so there you go.
Oh, you got to stay away from steakhouses, buddy. And listen, you're going to call me back. You're going to email me. I'm going to buy you dinner. And by God, if I have to camp out in your studio to find you, I will. Threat. Be good. Stay in touch. And buy my books.
Thank you, Max.
All righty, buddy.
KIDO Talk Radio time is 626. KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Good morning, Dave. And Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. So the high cost of gasoline, we're going to get to that in a minute. First, though, Sports Illustrated has hired the first model for their swimsuit issue. Now, I don't know if anybody ever really grows out of the swimsuit issue. You remember in the old days, that was the big thing. Then Sports Illustrated messed with it a little, and ESPN topped it where they have the body issue. And maybe because most of us love America, most of us are not hypocrites when it comes to living by a moral code. And most of us, maybe we've been brainwashed that having young ladies or not so young ladies wearing swimsuits is highly exploitive, right? Or maybe we just like looking at people at the beach, right? But and back to ESPN with the body issues where they have people posing naked. I'd rather worry about somebody throwing a football, catching a football, or dunking a basketball than seeing them naked. What that has to do with journalism or sports journalism is beyond me. But Sports Illustrated has their first model to wear a hijab, and a burkini. And it's a history-making Sports Illustrated swimsuit photo shoot. And I'm taking a look at this woman, and she's in her burkini. Basically, it's like a spandex outfit. She's got a garb over it, and she's got her hijab on. Now, first off, personally, maybe this is an outreach to the Muslim community, but I don't think it's going to go over with the radicals. I don't think it's really going to go over with anybody in America. I don't think that many people would appreciate this. And maybe I'm totally wrong. But how appealing is it? I think those people that are still, entitled to going to buying the Sports Illustrated swimsuit photo shoot, that look forward to that issue. It was like a rite of passage for most males. I love the in-depth reporting, and people say, well, that's what people used to say about Playboy. No, I don't think swimsuits have anything to do with athletic competition or anything else, but to have this young lady do it, very beautiful young lady. Maybe Sports Illustrated is trying to remain relevant after they've just recently been sold. But how many people at 580-5436, 580-KIDO would take a look at this and think to yourself, well, this might be a good thing? I don't know about that. I really don't. To me, it's antagonizing folks that are not down with people, showing themselves. You go to Saudi Arabia, you go to some of these countries, and women are all covered up. Well, she is covered up. She's in a bikini. I'm just saying I would be very uncomfortable with this, but I'm uncomfortable with the swimsuit issue in general, and maybe that's just me. And again, the keeper of traditional American values here in the Gem State. Okay, I promise. Coming up next, we'll take your calls on the high cost of gasoline. Is this a state issue? You talk to state officials, they're going to say it's up to the feds. You talk to the feds, they say, we can't control anything. It's the Saudis or it's the market. And if you missed our conversation earlier with Phil Kerpen from American Commitment, they cover energy. They lobby for the energy industry. I don't understand in America today, and Phil explained it very well, that if we're the world's largest producer of energy, largest producer of oil, why can't we give the American consumer a break? I think most people, and let me put it to you this way, wouldn't you like to see the American government looking out for Americans instead of American corporations? Join the conversation next. 580-5436. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Good morning, Maggie. All right, coming up next, we'll hear from Jim in Middleton, Art and Star, talking about gas prices and what we can do about it. Joining us now, quickly, Simon Owen joining us live from London, Fox News Radio, exclusively on KIDO Talk Radio. Simon, good morning.
Good morning, Kevin.
So we've got a whale with a harness, maybe a Russian spy?
Well, maybe, but maybe is the key word, because this is certainly a mystery for the time being. But it's what we've seen is some very unusual video footage that has been released by Norway's fisheries agency, specifically its sea surveillance unit. And it shows what looks to be a friendly, or at least a tame, beluga whale swimming up to a boat off the Norwegian coast in Arctic Norway, wearing a harness, which the fisheries agency says featured a mount for a camera and the words, "Equipment, St. Petersburg." Now, that's about all that we know. Norwegian officials are saying this animal was tame, that it wanted food, that it gladly ate the food they offered it. So they're suggesting it's perhaps used to being looked after by humans. They also say that a fisherman jumped into the water and removed the harness. They say it was quite tight, the harness that this animal was wearing. And then off it went. And what we've had, the verdict from one Norwegian official just said people in Norway's military have shown great interest in this harness.
We don't know if the whale was colluding at all or some type of whale report, or Robert Mueller might investigate.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was no camera attached to the camera mount. I don't think they really believe that this was some kind of surveillance mission, that this animal had been trained to go and take a look at Norwegian ships and see what was going on or anything like that. But, you know, there's one of the questions is, was it some kind of scientific project going on in Russia and this animal just got away? There is also a Russian naval base in the region, which is what has prompted the speculation that this animal may have come from some kind of military facility. And the reason that's got people scratching their heads a bit is that Russia was not known to have a history of using whales for military purposes. Now, the Soviet Union did train dolphins, famously intelligent. The U.S. Navy still uses dolphins today. But whales is something a little bit different. And so there is this slight element of mystery about it. But apparently the beluga whale keeps now turning up in a harbour called Tufjord, very sort of a hamlet, really, right at the top of Norway. It's pretty much its most northernmost point. And in recent days, this animal has apparently become a bit of an attraction. One of the TV networks in Norway went to speak to people. They said that it's really tame. When you call it, it comes to you, and they can pet it on the nose.
Well, I don't think Vladimir Putin would be as friendly.
Well, he wouldn't, but equally he's not a beluga whale, so perhaps they're just nicer by nature.
Simon, you have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
580-5436, 580-KIDO. Let's go to Jim in Middleton, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning, Kevin. How you doing this morning?
Living the dream, and you?
Just right, sir. Hey, Kevin, just quickly, you know, every time you ask somebody about gas prices in the news, or the gentleman that you had on, you get the biggest cock and bull story every single time, why they go up, why they go down, and so forth. And they say that, well, we can't control the market. Yet they are controlling the market. When was the last time we've seen any new companies come into the gas and oil industry? We've got 5 cartels controlling the whole ball of wax, Kevin, and they say they're not controlling anything. So that just doesn't wash. I'd like to see some free market capitalism in the oil industry, and I think we'll see prices go down if we get the government out of it and we get the cartels to loosen their grip. So I wanted to share that. All the rest of it is just a bunch of hype and BS, Kevin.
Right. It would be nice, though, if somebody took a look at, one of the, I think I read this biography about Harry Truman, and, you go back to the Truman Commission when he was a senator and all the war profiteering that was going on. It really put him on the map. Of course, today people would do that just to be put on the map. But when you take a look at these big companies, these big corporations, who's taking them on for the little guy?
Well, they're not. Okay, Kevin, and most all of our politicians are bought off by these people, and yet we hear from both sides of the aisle about what the American people want and what they're going to do for the American people. It's what they should say is what they're doing to the American people. Okay, if these people would just go on vacation and leave us alone, we'd do fine. Anyway, Kevin, I'm going to have to leave you a little short. You have a great day, and I will talk with you later, sir.
Thank you, Jim. You have a nice day.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. Art in Star with Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Art.
Good morning, Kevin. This oil situation. Have you ever heard of a little town called Cushing, Oklahoma?
Mm-mm.
That's where the oil prices are controlled from, in Cushing, Oklahoma.
Well, wait a minute. Not Riyadh, Saudi Arabia?
Everything's worldwide.
Okay.
I'm reading an article written by Arthur Berman. This article's a couple years old, and the lead-in sentence says this: world oil prices are controlled by the amount of crude oil stored at Cushing. That's because Cushing is the price point for West Texas Intermediate oil prices, which is the world's most traded oil futures contract. So when the tanks are low, the prices are high, and when the tanks are near full, the prices drop. That's your situation. But anyhow, if you look up Cushing, Oklahoma, there's all kinds of articles. You can get charts. You can see the current prices. There's, all the volatility charts and everything. I can't explain why it's moved up 50 cents in a month, but it's sitting around $63 a barrel about now. And
you talk about collusion. Let's talk about the collusion of the oil companies.
Well, I'm not sure if it's a collusion. See, they have to rent if you want an oil field. Has to be leased from the federal government. So you pay a certain amount of money for maybe 2 square miles, and you're allowed to drill there. And you got to pay a royalty fee. And those vary from month to month and from location to location and stuff like that. A lot of it has to do with the fact that Obama really hosed this country over big time when he blocked the installation of an oil pipeline transport pipe from the northern fields all the way down to where the refineries are. Okay, but that's my understanding that pipe is now being completed, and soon there should be lots of oil flowing out of that area. And at some point in time, the price should drop. The other thing that is affecting it is as we change out the rolling stock nationwide with more efficient engines, that translates to more miles per gallon, and therefore there's less fuel used. So there's two pressures going on here. But anyhow, if you look into that place called Cushing, Oklahoma, this article by Arthur Berman, it's a couple years old, but came from oilprice.com. It's titled "Cushing, Oklahoma is the Center of the Oil Universe." And it's for the entire world.
Art from Star, thank you. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO.
If you look at the prices nationwide, they're the highest levels since Halloween. In California, though, they're even higher, topping $4 a gallon on average. That's the highest level since 2014 and the highest in the nation. Now, taxes account for about $1 of that spread. Governor Gavin Newsom this week, though, calling for an investigation into what he calls inappropriate industry practices, which are keeping that spread even higher. Plus, there have been refineries shutting down for maintenance or other issues here in California. And keep in mind, prices typically jump this time of year as refiners switch to summer crude and often stay higher into summer, giving rising demand. What's unclear, though, is whether the sticker shock is going to crimp consumer spending. In Los Angeles, Robert Gray, Fox News.
Well, you could say that for the state of Idaho. And I just don't buy it. I don't buy the idea that in America today, in the land of Facebook and Google and our phones answer every problem imaginable, that, well, the spring blend is more expensive than the summer blend and we have to switch it over. And, of course, the collusion, in my mind, that the oil companies want to make sure they're profitable. And that's where I disagree with a lot of conservatives. Dave Petzel and I talked about this yesterday. Talked about this earlier as well at 580-5436. 580-KIDO, but there doesn't seem to be a great need to fix this problem. We just stick it to the consumers. Many of you remember what happened back in the days with the OPEC oil embargo. Many of you remember, well, when the state raised the cost of the fuel tax. Now people in the federal government and the state government are looking at raising the fuel tax again. Why? Because everybody uses it. It's passed on to everyone. Used to be a cheeseburger and fries cost you $5. Now it's $8. Why? Because the cost of things continue to go up. We get used to it. We tolerate it. There is no excuse for gas prices rising 50 cents in less than a month and being raised again yesterday. Well, Kevin, we don't make any money off gasoline. I don't really care if people make money or not. What I care about is the consumer. Who is really looking out for the consumer? Now, you're with a Republican administration or a Democratic administration, neither one is going to take on big oil because big oil means big money. But neither one of these conglomerates, we don't even want to call them a political party, conglomerates, can justify the high cost of gasoline. There used to be a disruption in the Middle East. Oil prices would go up. That would be explained. I mean, we're paying what we paid when oil was at 80 or 90 bucks a barrel. Now it's at $60 a barrel, and the prices still go up. The oil we talk about Russian collusion. This is oil company collusion. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. You're listening to Kevin Miller on the home for Sean Hannity, KIDO Talk Radio. Rolling on the right side, Kevin Miller in the morning. Phone numbers 580-5436. 580-KIDO. Coming up, Joe Biden makes his big pitch. Tomorrow, you have Attorney General William Barr will be testifying about the Mueller report before the Senate, I believe, or the House, one of them. We will have that coverage for you, beginning with our program tomorrow morning. Look for it around the 7 o'clock hour. So make sure if you want to listen to Attorney General William Barr spar with the congressional folks, what a way to start your day. We'll have that for you tomorrow morning. Coming up, many people are talking about this California terror attack on the synagogue and people blaming President Trump and everything else. We're going to talk a little bit about the hero of that. But first, we are getting your thoughts on the high cost of energy. Kyle writes in, when accounting for crude oil prices, shipping, refining, inflation, and taxes, gasoline should never be north of $2.31 a gallon ever. Anything above that per gallon price is price gouging by the various institutions involved. Yes, I would totally agree with you. Thank you, Kyle, for that. $2.31 a gallon. And here in Idaho, well, folks, we've got a pipeline that goes in, and that's all. That's our one source of energy. I don't know about you, but what do they always say about being prepared? The Boy Scouts, when you could call them the Boy Scouts. Be prepared. Like, for instance, myself and Mrs. Miller, after Saturday Mass or Sunday Mass, were at home watching the Game of Thrones. The big Battle of Winterfell goes on. And if you live in the Star, Middleton, I don't know if this happened in Eagle, you know exactly what I'm talking about. To everyone else, you can relate to this. It's not exclusionary. So about an hour into the an hour and 25 battle scene where not everybody talks and you're fighting and everything else, boom, the power goes out. Now, first thing I'm thinking is EMP. The second thing, I'm just sitting there fascinated going, wow, this is how it really happens. You're so engaged with something and boom, the power goes out. And I look at Carolina Miller. I look at Buster Miller, Bama Miller, rest in peace. And I'm looking at them going, wow, how dependent we are on electricity. Now, in other parts of the country, and maybe you have one of these as well, it's something called a generator. My parents have a generator because they have these nor'easters and they get feet of snow and power goes out all the time. think my brother has one as well. So, in his family. But they're prepared. And I thought to myself, boy, we are so not prepared for anything. And granted, it was cool, so it wasn't very hot. But boom, just like everybody else, we're just dependent on that one source of energy. Now, who can really afford to generate that sort of thing? My point being, with the state of Idaho, we're dependent on that one pipeline from Salt Lake. Now, sure, some of the good energy, some of the good gas gets pumped in from Montana. But when we talk about the plan for the future, and perhaps we're too hard on politicians, but that's what they're paid to do, to be political, to come up with a strategy, like a future strategy. Like when all of a sudden people started moving in, there should have been a plan on how to deal with this growth. At least initially, there was none. And now you're stuck in traffic, or you have Timmy the Tailgater or Tally the Tailgater riding your bumper on your way into work. What a wonderful way to start your day, right? So when it comes to energy, here in Idaho, we have so many people moving in. Why not figure out a way? I've often said to build a refinery. We have the land, we have the air. It's expensive. Well, it's expensive right now. That's just something you're going to have to live with. Well, in America today, weren't we taught to be the exception and to come up with things? Like the combustible engine. Like the assembly line. Like the light bulb. Where is that innovation in our great state? There is a lot of potential. But maybe it's a private corporation. Maybe it's somebody like our friend Tommy Ahlquist. He comes up with a better way to do it. Maybe it's somebody like that will sit there and think of a way to come up with a refinery, or a way to make us not so dependent on the one fuel line from Salt Lake, so the people in Salt Lake can say, oh, we want to make more profits. Boom, 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 boom. And you're stuck with less money in your pocket, more debt on your credit card. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. KIDO Talk Radio, traffic and weather together. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Good morning, Dave. Well, that's just good news. If you want to go out and have a good time, enjoy the weekend. Coming up, we'll take a look at Joe Biden's candidacy. Many people believe that he's the one that can take down Donald Trump, and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein has decided to step down coming up in the next month. You think about what Rosenstein was around, what he accomplished, what he didn't, saying that he jokingly, if anybody believes that, was going to wear a wire with the president to try and entrap the president of the United States. He gets to step down. He gets to walk away. The Mueller report exonerating the president. Of course, when it comes to Joe Biden and others, they don't believe that. They're ready to take on the president. Be careful what you wish for, Joe Biden.
But folks, everybody knows who Donald Trump is. And I believe in hope.
Well, what did hope get us for 8 years? Think about it, folks. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.